Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is, for one, a really stupid title, but more importantly, is the 5th entry in the Indiana Jones franchise. This is the first film to be released by Disney, and while George Lucas and Steven Spielberg have executive producing credits, the film is directed by Logan director James Mangold. If you haven't already, check out my bucket list video for the previous Indiana Jones movie so you know my thoughts going into this film. Even before I had watched the rest of the series, I didn't really have the highest expectations for this movie. Trailers did absolutely nothing for me, and the early reviews weren't helping much. I tried to keep an open mind and chose to remain optimistic.
You chose poorly.
I'm sorry, this movie sucked. This is easily the worst movie in the Indiana Jones franchise. Yes, worse than Crystal Skull. Which is ironic because both movies feature an aging, decrepit Indiana Jones being dragged out of retirement for one more adventure. But at least in Skull, Harrison Ford actually seemed like he wanted to be there. It's fitting that this movie deals with a sour, depressed, tired, and broken down Indy because it seems like he's doing everything he can to exit the movie as quickly as possible. The story centers around a group of Nazis tracking down Archimedes' dial because it can open up portals in time, and they intend to use this dial to go back and correct all of Hitler's mistakes. Okay, I know that discussing realism is kind of pointless in a series that contains voodoo magic, eternal life, and aliens, but even with the fantastical elements of the other films, they still kept themselves grounded in some form of reality. There's a line for what's believable in this universe, and time travel kinda crosses it. With a new indie adventure comes a new cast of side characters and villains, and honestly, I didn't like any of them. Mads Mikkelsen gave a decent performance, but that's just because he's Mads Mikkelsen. You can make him play a plank of wood, but he will still act the hell out of that plank of wood. The worst by far is Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena. She is easily one of the most annoying characters in any of these movies. And not in the same way that Willie from Temple was annoying and that she whines and screams and complains all the time. She just has that arrogant condescension towards Indy. Every line out of her mouth feels like a snarky slap in the face. She's obnoxious to watch and she has no rapport off of Indy. There's some decent action set pieces. I think the tuk-tuk chase toward the middle of the movie looked pretty cool, but the rest of the action is just so overly reliant on CGI that it's hard not to look at it and just see a bunch of noise. I think it's because of how fast-paced the editing is. The action in the original looked and felt a lot cooler and more real because it was played out and you could feel the anticipation of each moment. Whereas here, they need to make it faster and to keep the audience's attention, but it just doesn't leave the same impact. And speaking of pacing, this movie is way too goddamn long. This is a 2.5-hour slog. It's just pointless action followed by long, boring stretches of conversation followed by more pointless action. Say what you want about Crystal Skull, but it at least kept our attention. Here, me and my girlfriend were fighting to stay awake. With all this in mind, is there anything I actually liked about the movie? I mean, the first 15 to 20 minutes were pretty cool. It felt like classic Indiana Jones. The de-aging on Harrison Ford, for the most part, looked pretty cool. The action was coherent. The threat felt important. It was a really strong opening. But for it to start so promising only to take a nosedive so quickly, it honestly just kind of makes the rest of the movie feel worse. I really wanted to like this movie. I wanted it to rise above all the negative preconceptions and deliver a fun send-off for one of our favorite action heroes. But it was just a dull mess. Once again, regardless of what you might think of Crystal Skull, it was at least entertaining to watch, both for good reasons and for bad reasons. Save for that opening, I was never once entertained by this movie. I was patiently waiting for it to be over. Let me know in the comments what you thought, and I'd give this a 2 out of 5.